Meeting of the Rhuddlan Local History Society. Not very often I say that, and I've got to stop and think about it, particularly when it's down here in initials. So there we go. Just one or two notes before we start. Julie, our researcher, is working closely with Ysgol y Castell on their 90th anniversary celebrations. So if you are an ex-pupil and you haven't shared your school day stories, it's not too late. It's September, so purchasing early Christmas presents can't be ruled out. So for that person who has absolutely everything, why not consider the History Society calendar? It's on sale tonight. And the good news is that the price hasn't gone up. For the 5th year in a row, it remains at £6. Bargain of the century. Right, now my favourite subject on this day in history. If you remember 1666, anybody remember that? Yeah, I thought you might. Yeah. There's always one, isn't there? There's always one. 1666. Fire breaks finally bring the Great Fire of London under control, leaving 13,200 houses destroyed and only 8 dead. Now here's one for the Chancellor. 1698, Russian Tsar Peter the Great imposes a tax on beards. So watch out for the November budget.
Good idea.
1774, 12 of the 13 American colonies adopt a trade embargo against Great Britain at the First Continental Congress in Carpenter's Hall, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. All I can say to that is, don't tell Donald. 1887, gas lamp at Theatre Royal in Exeter catches fire, killing 200 people. And when you think of the fire of London, yeah, it's another interesting one. 1923, this is boxing now, I'm sure you're all into boxing. 1923, flyweights Jean LaRue and Kid Pancho knock each other out simultaneously. You just imagine that, can't you? I seem to remember seeing something similar. It was I can't remember what programme it was, but oh, I know. Yes. What was that prison programme with Ronnie? Porridge. That was it. Yeah. They did exactly the same in that. Yeah. Nearly there. 1968, the Huckleberry Hound show by Hanna-Barbera featuring Yogi Bear premieres on US television. And finally, 2023, bringing us right up to date, real life, Birmingham City Council, the largest local authority in Europe, effectively declares itself bankrupt after stopping all non-essential spending. Well, whether you believe it or not, what is factual is our guest speaker tonight, from Llandudno Library, Judith Phillips.
Museum.
Yes, museum. Yeah, you're absolutely. I just wondered if you were awake and listening. Good, good. That's what we like. An attentive audience. Judith Phillips, whose subject is Llandudno from Neolithic times to the present day. Judith has brought with her some handling objects from the museum collection, and she is accompanied by Alicia Aniston, the newly appointed Community Engagement Officer. Judith, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's a very large floor. I hope I can fill it.
You'll get used to it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking I might float away on a cloud, mightn't I? Can you hear me at the back, or do I need a microphone? Can you hear me?
Yes.
I don't normally use a microphone. My voice is quite loud, as you can hear. and I'm used to projecting my voice. So, Llandudno from Neolithic times to the present day. It sounds very boring, doesn't it? And I can't really do it in the time I have allotted today, but I'm going to skip through it, and at the end, happy to take any questions that you might want to put to me, and Alicia will be happy to show you some of the objects that we've brought with us tonight, and you can handle them if you wish. I think don't have to wear gloves for these, do they, Alicia? No, that's good, because we haven't got any. But there we are. Just a little bit of background information. Llandudno Museum was founded in 1926. It's run by a charitable trust, the Rhuddlan Trust. And that is because the museum was founded on the objects and property left to the people of Llandudno by a very wealthy man called Francis Edward Rhuddlan. He was Edward Rhuddlan, actually, but I call him Eddie. Anyway, in 1926 he passed away, and he left his house, a very large house in the Prynhawn area of Llandudno, and all the objects in it, and even his late mother's jewellery, in trust to the people of Llandudno. So the Rhuddlan Trust was formed to run that museum, if you like, which was created within the premises, within his house in Prynhawn. And it ran like that until 1996, when a decision was taken by the then trustees that hardly anyone was visiting it and having the opportunity to see a quite remarkable collection, actually, of objects from all over the world, but also relating to the history of Llandudno. So they decided that they would try to move it closer to the town centre, and the chairman at the time was a local businessman who owned premises in Llandudno Street, very close to the town centre, and he agreed that he would sell his premises to the Rhuddlan Trust below market value, which was very generous of him. So the property in Prynhawn was sold, and the money was used to buy the property in Llandudno Street, Llandudno Avenue, in the town centre. So just a little bit of background. The museum is an accredited museum. We've had accreditation since 2023. We hold 9,000 artefacts relating to the history, not just of Llandudno, but to the immediate area. And as I said at the very, very beginning, those objects go back, in some instances, to Neolithic times, because people come on holiday to Llandudno, or they retire to Llandudno. And we haven't got a lovely Edward I castle there, as you have here, although there is one nearby in Conwy. But people were living on the Great Orme and the Little Orme in Neolithic times. And we have evidence to that effect in the museum. We have one particular very important artefact that we know is 13,500 years old. And that was found in a cave on the Great Orme. So people come, they see this Victorian, Edwardian town that was only created in 1850. Before that, Llandudno, as I say, had been inherited since the Neolithic times, and before the Victorian town was created, it was at that time a copper mining and fishing village, mostly centred on the Great Orme, because the flat land was a marsh, and it wasn't very productive. I'll come to that bit later, because I'm jumping ahead. I'm going to go now back to Neolithic times, when these people arrived via what was then a land bridge from Europe, because in Neolithic times, just after the first ice age, there was still a land bridge, and they came across, they walked, they were hunter-gatherers, and some of them got as far north as Llandudno, and they saw the Great Orme, and at that time it was surrounded by fertile plains with all sorts of wildlife that could be hunted, deer, boar, various other creatures which were very, very useful for clothing, a bear, for instance. So they decided to settle there and built up a community. They lived initially in the caves, and then I'm going to skip through again. As time progressed, then of course they built round huts, and these were on the Little Orme and the Great Orme, those settlements. We have an Iron Age hill fort which actually overlooks the museum from the Great Orme. It's always been a very, very populous area for its time, if you like, because it was an easily defendable promontory, and because it had the sea for fish, and it had not productive land, but lots of animals that people could hunt and live off. And we have lots of evidence of that at the museum: Stone Age, Neolithic, Stone Age, Iron Age objects, and some of them we have here with us tonight. Although I have to say that the ones that we bring are from our handling collection. They're not from the collection that we keep stored. So I'm just jumping around, I know a little bit, but there we go. I tend to do that. I'm going to jump now from Neolithic times to 4,500 years ago, when the settlers on the Orme at that time discovered that there was copper there and started to mine it. So the Great Orme copper mines are 4,500 years old. It's believed to be the oldest industrial mining site in Europe and one of the oldest industrial mining sites in the world. And these people were mining the copper, they were smelting it, they were smelting it on the beach, and they were then transporting it, even then, around quite a wide area. So more about the Great Orme copper mines can be heard and seen if you decide to visit the Great Orme copper mines, or if you come to the museum, because we've got quite a lot of information within the museum about the early mining. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about that, because otherwise the whole talk would be about the Great Orme mines. But then we had the Romans came along, and again, people don't perhaps realise that the Romans were actually in Llandudno. They were there because they had built a ford at Chester, and they wanted to build a fort here in Wales, and they chose the site of Prynhawn to build a fort there. Obviously, they were again interested in the minerals that Wales contained. Not just copper, but gold and silver as well. And they sent surveyors out, and they came along the coast, and that was fine until they actually got to the River Conwy. And they were a little bit stumped as to how they were going to cross the Conwy safely, because they were being raided constantly by people who obviously didn't want them in Wales. And what they did was they realised, obviously, that Conwy, like your river, is tidal, and they went upriver for about 3 miles from the town of Conwy, what is now the town of Conwy, and they found that there was a point where the legions could march across the river at low tide. They might have had the water around their ankles at some points, but they could cross the river at low tide, and at high tide they could take galleys up the river to unload supplies which were coming from other parts of their empire. So they built quite a substantial fort there. It's a place called Prynhawn. near Dolgarrog. There's a church on the site now, St Mary's Church, Prynhawn, has been built on the site of the Roman fort of Cofion. And Cofion housed 500 legionaries with ancillary accommodation for merchants and I was going to say concubines and wives, but yes, there were the followers of the army. And the next move was to reopen the Great Orme copper mines, which they did. And they mined the copper from there, turned it into brass, which was very useful to them for armaments and for other uses as well. And when Llandudno was being created in the 1800s, the foundations of the buildings that were on the main street, which was Mostyn Street, were being dug, and a huge hoard of Roman coins was found underneath what is now Mostyn Street. And they weren't very high denomination coins, so the supposition is that they were used to pay the miners. It wasn't as though it was used for purchase of copper or anything like that. The supposition is used to pay the miners. Now, Cofion is quite an important site, as you probably gathered, an archaeological site, and it was excavated in 1926. 36, I'm getting mixed up with the date of the museum. In 1936, and it's the only time there has been an excavation there. But it was a very successful excavation. Lots of items were found there, amphora, various pieces of terracotta cookware, ornaments, floor tiles, early board games that the legionaries played when they were trying to amuse themselves between marching up and down, patrolling the area and trying to stop the marauding Celts from attacking them. And most of those finds came to Llandudno Museum. Some of them went to the National Museum in Cardiff, but the bulk of them has come to Llandudno Museum. We have them stored, some of them in our storage area, but we have a Roman gallery within the museum that reflects what Cofion must have been like, and helps to tell a little bit about the story of the people that lived there and worked there. And in 2018, as I say, the land is all privately owned. St Mary's Church was built on it in medieval times, but the surrounding farmland is privately owned, and the farmers have not wanted to let another excavation take place. And I think it's their prerogative. But in 2018, one of the farmers allowed 2 metal detectorists to go onto the land, and these 2 gentlemen who are from the north of England managed to get permission because one of them was an agricultural feed supplier, and he supplied the farmer with feed, so they came to some sort of an agreement that he could go on with his metal detector and get discount. He would give the farmer discount on the feed. So that was the arrangement, I think. So they went on, and they only had 1 day though. He only allowed them on for 1 day. And it was an awful day, pouring with rain for most of the day, and they just were up and down with these detectors and they didn't find anything. And they were just about to go home, and one of them thought, well, I'll keep my detector on as I walk up the field on my way home. And as he did so, it started to bing, 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 bing. And they stopped, they got their trowels out, they started to dig, and they found a hoard of Roman coins. And then about 10 yards away, they found another hoard of Roman coins. And one of those hoards has now come to the Llandudno Museum. Because of COVID, it took a long, long time because you have to go through an inquest process. They did the correct thing, they reported them, as they should do, to the coroner, and they had to go through an inquest process. Then it was decided that they should go to the National Museum in Cardiff. Then the National Museum in Cardiff sorted through them, decided that they weren't of any particular monetary worth, cleaned them up a little bit, and then announced that we could have them at the Llandudno Museum. So we have got them at the Llandudno Museum, and it is quite an interesting collection because they reflect what the Roman Empire was about. Because those legionaries, the 500 legionaries, came throughout the Roman Empire. Because what the Romans did, as some of you probably know, is that wherever they went and conquered a country, they would recruit people to the legions. And they didn't actually have to press gang them, because what they did was they offered them a deal that if they served in the legion for 25 years, they could return to their homeland and they would be given a plot of land and the freehold on it, if you like, so it would be their plot of land to do what they wanted. So if they survived 25 years in the Legion, then they could go home and get that plot of land. But some of those coins that were found in this latest, if you like, metal detection, are from North Africa. And one of the ones that I find most interesting, because we've got them on display now, we've got some of them are from what was Gaul, Germany, France, some of them was from what was Spain, but quite a lot from North Africa. And the one that intrigues me most has the head of Mark Antony on it. I mean, he wasn't an emperor, but he was governor of the province of Egypt, what is now Egypt. And his head is on this coin. And of course we all know the story of Mark Antony and Cleopatra. We've heard Shakespeare's version, we've heard various other versions as well. But I look at that and it brings history alive to me. But actually the collection that we've got covers about 20 Roman emperors. So if you do come to the museum, we've got them beautifully displayed by a gentleman who came from the British Museum in London and spent a year with us, had a sabbatical year with us. He was one of their assistant exhibition managers, and so he has displayed this latest collection of Roman coins in a cabinet that we didn't know we had, because we couldn't afford to buy a new one, but he found it down in our basement, and it originally came from the Victoria and Albert Museum. But none of us know how or when it was acquired, but it was perfect for displaying these Roman coins. So we've done the Romans, and then we have the Vikings, and the Vikings came as well. And it was the Vikings that gave the Great Orme its name. I'm sure most of you know that as well, because they came by sea from the kingdom that they created, the Viking kingdom in Ireland. They came by sea. And it seems that when they saw the Great Orme, they thought it represented or looked like a sea monster, a sea serpent. So they called it Orm. Orm is the Viking word for serpent. And because it was large, they're equivalent to the word great. So, Great Orm, the big serpent. The little Orme, obviously at the other end of the bay, doesn't look like a serpent at all. It looks, if you look at it from the Great Orme, you can see that it looks just like an elephant with its trunk in the sea. But they wouldn't have known what an elephant was. So they're both named for serpents. There we are. So yes, the Vikings came over. They didn't actually settle in Llandudno, but I'm sure that they helped themselves to some of the copper while they were there. We don't know an awful lot about them being there, but they obviously were. Right, so then we're going to go and skip now. We've done 4,500 years ago. We've come to the Romans, and I've missed the little bit, and it's only when I mentioned the Little Orme that I remember our star exhibit in many ways, a lady called Blodwen. Have you heard about Blodwen? You've seen Blodwen? Oh, you don't know what you're missing. Now, Blodwen, we don't know what this lady's name was. She's 4,000 years old. And her bones were found on the Little Orme in 1882, I think the exact date was, when the Little Orme was being quarried to help build houses at that end of Llandudno, the Craigside, Prynhawn end of the town. And there was a big quarry on the Little Orme. And on this particular day, some of the miners were sent up onto the cliffs to put some dynamite into a fissure so that they could blast away some more rock. And as they looked into the fissure, they could see bones. And they weren't sure, they didn't look like animal bones. They weren't sure what they were, but they thought they didn't look like animal bones. So they called the mine manager, who happened to be from Bacup in Lancashire, and was a member of Bacup Historical Society, and a keen amateur archaeologist also. And he came and looked, and he said they definitely look like human bones. So he got them very, very carefully removed, and he took them back to Bacup, to the Historical Society, and they assembled the skeleton, and it remained in Bacup until about 10 years ago, when a gentleman from Llandudno launched a campaign to bring back Blodwen, because he decided she should be called Blodwen. And we knew that it was a lady because the bones had been examined by Manchester University, and they had done various tests on the bones, and they had established that it was a female, and that she's aged between about 58 and 62 years of age. She was 4,000 years old, that she had probably died. She'd obviously been carrying heavy loads because she had quite a lot of arthritis in this area and all through her body. But they concluded that she had died from secondary breast cancer. Amazing, isn't it, what they can discover? So we wanted our Blodwen back. So the campaign was launched, and eventually Bacup Historical Society very reluctantly agreed that she could actually come back to her hometown. But they were very determined they were going to hang on to her. It was a real struggle. So they sent her back. The only problem was that one of the members of the Historical Society decided she looked a bit grubby. So they put her in a pillowcase and put her in the washing machine. Poor Blodwen. She did have feet before she went into the washing machine. But the feet disintegrated. Her skull was completely intact. And now, unfortunately, we've got most of the skull, but we haven't got the jaw, and we haven't got... I don't want to spoil your evening by describing the bits that are missing, but there are bits missing. But it is still a practically complete skeleton. This lady who lived on the Little Orme in a mud hut with a thatched roof, wore animal skins. Her husband or partner would be out hunting all day, and she and the other women would be doing the heavy work, carrying the heavy loads, carrying water, carrying feed stuff for the animals that they might have kept. And she'd obviously worked very, very hard, but to have lived to such an age was quite remarkable. They reckoned that she was probably, as I say, between 58 and 63, which when the average life expectancy was well below 40. That was remarkable. But they think she perhaps could have been a person of some standing in the community. But we don't know. Anyway, if you want to see Blodwen, she's in a beautiful display case in our museum, and I'm particularly fond of Llandudno. I do skip around because opposite Llandudno is the item which actually confirms that people were living on the Orme 13,500 years ago, and that's a horse's jawbone. Sounds boring, doesn't it? But that was found at the back of a cave on the Great Orme, again around 1880, around about that time. And there was a chap called Thomas Kendrick who lived in that cave, because those caves on the Great Orme were inhabited well into Victorian times and into the early 20th century. My late husband's grandfather lived in one of those caves for a period of time. He was a miner who came, a slate miner from Llandudno, who came to Llandudno to work in the Great Orme mines when they were reopened again in Victorian times. And a lot of those miners, when they first came, there was no accommodation for them, so they lived in the caves on the Orme until cottages could be built for them. So Thomas Kendrick was living in this cave, and he was making jewellery out of some of the things that he found at the back of his cave. He was finding all sorts of pebbles and stones and things like that, but the further back he went, he started finding bones and other objects. And after his death, archaeologists went in and they found lots of bones of different animals, but the one that really, really intrigued them was this horse's jawbone, which has been decorated with ochre. And it's been quite finely decorated with ochre, so it was sent to the British Museum, and they dated it 13,500 years old and said it was probably used for ceremonial reason. It could have been used in a burial, or it could have been used for some other sort of ceremonial reason that we don't know. But that jawbone is of great importance. In actual fact, the British Museum hung on to it. They're a bit like Baker. So they have got that jawbone, but they were very kind and sent us an excellent replica, which we have on display. But we're now thinking that we might try to get the original horse's jawbone back as well. But it is there, and as I say, that's absolute proof that people were living, hunting and eating on the Great Orme 13,500 years ago. Now, I'm not going to take too much time, because I want you to have time for some questions, and then also Alicia is going to show you some of the objects. But we'll come back to the modern times, more modern times now. Huge jump. We'll skip the Civil War, because obviously the area was involved in the Civil War, and the dissolution of the monasteries, believe it or not, but we'll skip all that, and we'll come through to Victorian times, when the landowners, the Mostyn family, obviously, ancestral seat is at Mostyn, just down the coast here, but they owned all the land in and around Llandudno. Some of it they'd obtained by marriage, some of it they'd obtained by dodgy dealing, some people would say, but they owned all the land. And the problem was that it wasn't at all productive. The mines were coming to their end of their useful productive life, and they're thinking ahead, well, where are we going to get income from? And the land, although there were a couple of farms, it was really marshland. So it wasn't productive at all. So they're trying to think of ideas of how they could utilise this bit of land. And one idea was that they would make it the harbour for Ireland, because the government in Westminster was then thinking of having a port on the North Wales coast to link with Ireland. And so that was the first idea they had. The railway was coming, they were going to build a railway. The reason Llandudno has a branch line from in Llandudno Junction, not because it's a nice resort, because the original plan was to make it that port, and it was going to be called St George's Harbour. And the first hotel to be built on Llandudno Promenade by the Mostyn family is the St George's Hotel, and that was there to serve St George's Harbour. And then they found, after they built the third pier, that it still wasn't long enough because it's not a deep enough anchorage. So that's when the railway was continued and they went through to Holyhead, and that's why Holyhead ended up being bought for Ireland. And it actually makes more sense because it's a shorter journey anyway. But that was the original idea of Llandudno, that it would be St George's Harbour. And then on one day, a young gentleman from Liverpool who happened to be an architect came on a day trip to Llandudno. His name was Owen Williams. He had family who lived in this area. And he looked at it and he went to the Mostyn family with a proposal. He thought that it would make a watering hole, as they were called in those days. So, a watering place. And so he put this proposition to the Mostyns, to their land agent and to the Lord, and it was decided that it was a good idea. So he drew up plans for this resort, which was going to, they wanted it to appeal to the gentry. So it had wide streets and wide pavements to allow ladies in elaborate dresses to be able to pass each other holding their parasols or umbrellas or whatever, and the streets to allow carriages to pass each other comfortably. So in 1850, work started on building the resort that you see today, and it is very much a purpose-built resort. And the town plan, obviously, was all designed to make it attractive to a certain class of person. So the buildings were designed with that in mind, the streets and the pavements were designed with that in mind. And it did, in fact, as you know, probably, become a very popular Victorian watering place. And lots of people, hotels started to be built, but also industrialists and very wealthy business people, particularly from Liverpool, Merseyside, north of England, started building houses there, holiday houses there. The Pilkington family built a big house in what is now Church Walks. A member of the Tate and Lyle family built a big holiday home. Henry Popchin, who went on to acquire Bodmer Gardens and design Bodmer Gardens, his first holiday home was in Llandudno on the Great Orme, and Howfrey Gardens on the Great Orme were created by him before he went to Bodmin. So all these very, very wealthy people were building holiday homes, and amongst them was a chap called Dean, well, it's not his Christian name, but he was Dean Liddell of Christ College in Oxford. And one of his students and then one of the professors at the college was a young man called Charles Ludwig Dodgson, whose pen name was Lewis Carroll. And Mr. Liddell, Dean Liddell, first of all rented a holiday house for his family opposite the entrance to Llandudno Pier, and then he built a very grand house for the family at West Shore. And the supposition is that Charles Ludwig Dodgson, aka Lewis Carroll, visited them because his family home was in Dasbury, not far away, just near Northwich in Cheshire. His father was the vicar there, that it would be an easy journey for him to make. And there is a photograph, it's a sepia photograph, that seems to show him on the steps of the house at West Shore with Alice Liddell, who is the subject of the books, or the inspiration for the books. She was the youngest child of the Liddell family, and the story is that Charles Ledward Dodgson would take her and her brothers and sisters for walks on the Great Orme, and of course on the Great Orme there were lots of rabbit holes. And he would tell them stories. And eventually these stories developed into the book that we now know. So Alice in Wonderland, and later Alice Through the Looking Glass. So that's why there are a lot of Alice-related things around Llandudno, and a lot of roads and streets in Llandudno name. We've got a whole housing estate called Liddell Park. We've got Carroll Place. We've got Alice Grove. Lots and lots of places named after the Liddell family and Lewis. So there we are. So Llandudno now is this Victorian Edwardian resort. It's still just as popular as it was. It's very, very busy at the moment. I think this summer's one of the busiest summers that I've seen for a long, long time. Very, very busy. And right in the centre of it is our museum. And in our museum, if you visit, we tell in quite an interactive way. It's not boring, it's not dull, because in 2018 we started to redevelop. We wanted to redevelop the museum, and we managed to raise £1.6 million, which isn't easy. We had £860,000 from the Heritage Lottery Fund, but we had to match fund that. So as trustees, there are only 6 of us trustees. That was our responsibility, but we managed to raise the money, and I'm very proud of what we managed to achieve. It's now completely accessible. We put in a lift. Every room in the museum is accessible. We have toilets all through the building, accessible toilets on the ground and the top floors. And we do an awful lot of community work. This is what Alicia is involved in at the moment. We have lots of groups coming in using our facilities, and we have a very large band of very enthusiastic volunteers who are people from all sorts of backgrounds and a wide range of people who have had certain challenges in life or facing challenges in life now. And they come to us, and I personally absolutely love working with these people and seeing how they found inspiration to go forward and improve and take on new challenges through helping us at the museum. So that's the end of my talk. I'm happy to answer questions, and if any of you, as I say, would like to come and handle some of these objects that Alicia's brought in, they range from when the Stone Age right through to
Stone Age to Roman we've got.
Stone Age to
Roman.
Stone Age to Roman objects that we have here with us. And as I say, I'm very happy to answer any questions that you might ask. And I hope I haven't bored you. I tend to ramble.
Thank you very much.
Well, I know you said that you could have gone on forever, but
I can.
what you have told us was very interesting, and in particular how you managed to lose things to the National Museum of Wales in Cardiff and get them back again.
Yeah.
We'd like to know your secret.
Never give up. Never give up.
Anyway, if that was just part of what you've got, that was very interesting. Perhaps we could have you back again to give us the other bit.
Or perhaps you would like to come on a group visit, because we do have groups coming in, and we do have group visits. It's a large number. We divide you into 2 separate groups, but we offer tea, coffee, biscuits afterwards. I'm very happy to welcome you to the museum if you would like to do that.
We'll discuss that.
Where is this building? Where is your building?
Our building is, do you know where Wetherspoons is in Cardiff? On the same road as Wetherspoons. But we're very close to the town centre. It's actually Llanudno Avenue, which was built to link the West Shore, because we've got 2 beaches, the West Shore to the North Shore. So it's about 200 yards from the town centre on the road that takes you between Llandudno and the West Shore.
Really interesting. Thank you.
And we've got a bus stop right practically 50 yards away.
What's the name of the museum? What's the actual name of the
Llandudno Museum.
Llandudno Museum?
Llandudno Museum and Gallery, and it's run by the Children Trust.
By what trust?
Sorry?
What trust?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
By what trust?
The Children Trust,
Chardon.
which is named after the man who left his collection to the
Oh,
town.
yeah.
Yeah, Francis Edward Chardon. So, yes, I'm a Children trustee. You know, we're a charity, so we don't get any help from the government. We don't get any financial support from the government. We don't get any financial support from Conwy County Borough Council either. We get a small annual grant from Llandudno Town Council, but our running costs this year are £82,000, and we have to find that money. We have to raise that money either through fundraising efforts or people coming through the door. And we have,
How much is the entrance fee?
we have a shop. We're very reasonably priced. We're £5 for adults and £3 for concessions, and a concession is anyone over 60 or who is registered disabled or a student.
So you're okay, it's £3.
It's £3. We're cheap and very, very cheerful.
You open all every day of the week?
No, because we are mostly run by volunteers. We have Alicia, who is with us in a part-time basis, but has only just joined us. And we have a museum manager, but otherwise we run it just with volunteers. But our overheads, because it's an accredited museum, we have to maintain an ambient temperature to keep the exhibits, in the best possible condition. Our heating and lighting bills are considerable. We are trying to cut them down because it's a very old building, it's quite difficult to do. We've taken some advice. What we would love to do is be able to put solar panels on the roof, but we can't afford to do it. We're trying to find grants for that. But it's a constant struggle to find grants appropriate to what our needs are. And we can get grants for projects sometimes, but getting grants towards core funding, i.e. meeting our running costs, very, very difficult. So it is a constant struggle. We're open Tuesday to Saturday inclusive. We're closed on Sundays and Mondays. And we're open from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m.
Judith, talking about entry fees, it might be worth a good time to mention that actually tomorrow on the 20th we're doing CADU's Open Doors, so we're doing free entry tomorrow and on the 20th, and I aim to do some leaflets about events that we have this month if anyone's interested as well.
Because we have a full programme of heritage walks and talks on various subjects. It's a very, very, very varied programme, actually, don't we?
It is.
Yeah. We've got things going on at the museum every day of the week, basically, and we do craft classes. Lots and lots of different activities are going on at the museum. And I say tomorrow is CADU Open Doors, so it's free entry tomorrow, and we've got lots of special activities going on tomorrow as well. And then the 20th, so a fortnight tomorrow, we've got another free entry day. Because we just want people to come in and have a look. And generally, when they have been, they say how much they've enjoyed it. So, yes, we'd love to see you, any of you, individually, or if you want to come as a group, that would be lovely.
Fine, as I said, we'll discuss that. Right, what we're going to do next is the raffle, once we've got you sitting down. And then once that's done, you can come and have a look at the exhibits that this year has brought with them. You wouldn't have you actually done one?
Not quite.
Oh, right, okay. Yeah, do the first one. Pink colour, 786 to 790 pink. Must be in the room. Doors are locked, nobody's gone out. Oh, it's Julie. Right, well done.
There you go. Oh, sorry. Oh, I've dropped it and to be honest, my back's stuck. I'll bend down for it.
Thank you.
You're right, hold the top up. Hold the top up.
I'm all right.
All right.
Who's that for? 151155. Blue. Thank you.
Me? Hush, please. Pay attention now, children. It just leaves me to let you know that October the 3rd, we have North Wales Police here. So you better be on your best behaviour. So thank you all very much for coming this evening, and come and have a look at what Alicia has got. And there's no putting them in your pocket. Put them back again afterwards.
Give me a 20. Use this to grind it up. And when you hold it, you can actually feel it. It sits in the palm of your hand quite well. Let's have a look. Pass it around. Please don't drop it on your toes. There we go. Oh yes, please help yourself to leaflets as well. There we go. And we also, this is probably two of my favourite things. These are both stone hand axes, again about 4,000 plus years old. And again, when you hold them, so this we use actually you use an axe for, but just with your hand. When you're holding it, again, you can feel it sits into your arm really nicely. There we go. Bye.
On the beach.